From all of us involved with Compass, we'd like to pause to acknowledge the first people of the land on which we are all gathered today. For us here at Circular Quay, that is the land of the Gadigal people. If you're watching us from around the Sydney Basin, then you are on the land of the Eora Nation. And if you've tuned in from further afield, then we acknowledge the first people where you are. We want to thank them for their stewardship of the land and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Thank you.
Well, hello there and welcome to this edition of Compass. So great to have you with us for what's going to be an absolutely fantastic show today. My name is Andrew Everingham. I'm the CEO of Capital E and I'm also the founder of Sydney Homeless Connect. So for today's topic, I've got a foot in both camps, you might say. As you already know, the title for today is Business as an Agent for Positive Change. And couldn't we all do with a little bit of that right now? There's probably no need to rehash and dwell on the last 12 months. Everybody knows what we've been going through, the dynamics of the life in which we find us. And more than ever, we probably recognise we're all in this together. So we often hear the term of change agents, or we talk about this concept of business as a change enabler. But as a team, we decided to add in the word positive, business as an agent for positive change, to try and qualify it a little more. Now, I once received an award at a previous business, and when I held the trophy up and read it, it said the Made a Difference Award. And I thought to myself, a good difference? I certainly hope it was a good difference, but it wasn't written there. So we've decided to say the point of difference here is that it's positive change is what we're really talking about. So I'm super lucky today to have three amazing panellists with me who would certainly be getting an award that was Made a Big Difference Award. I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to them now. Honestly, I've had the absolute pleasure of working with or collaborating with all three of these legends. And so I'm actually going to pick on you first, Alison, today. I hope that's okay.
I think so.
All right, great. So Alison Covington is the founder and managing director of Good 360 Australia. And if you haven't yet cottoned on to Good 360 Australia, it's time that you did. It's absolute genius. They connect the spare goods of businesses to Australians who need them most. So Alison, welcome.
Thank you.
I might get you to just explain that spare goods and connecting to Australians. Can you tell us how that works?
So spare goods, what's spare goods? So spare goods are all non-food goods. So we worked out here in Australia, we were very good at matching food, but I asked the question what was happening with all the other good things. So spare goods could be clothing, toys, furniture, white goods, beauty goods, and businesses who had these goods didn't have the infrastructure or the solution to connect those to charities, schools and Australians who needed them. I read about Good 360 happening in the US, and they had been operating for, at that time, more than 30 years and had connected $7 billion worth of those goods to Americans. And I said, well, why aren't we doing that here in Australia? So I started Good 360 here in Australia, and that's what we do. We help businesses do good, and they can connect those brand new goods to people who need it. And you know, we've connected 18 million items to Australians who need that, and at the speed and scale we're doing it at the moment, that's 13 items a minute. So they're brand new goods that businesses wanted a solution for.
Right, 13 items a minute. I mean, it's such a simple concept, but so brilliant. We had the chance to work together before Christmas on a Salesforce project where we were packing care packs together, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was just a really great experience. So
and it's nice to bring businesses who want to do good. They want something tangible to be able to do with their teams. Pack these goods, and we've got many Australians who have had a tough year. We know what last year was all about, and we can match the goods of businesses, bring people together to volunteer to do that, and get them out to Australians who need them. And they were just idle. They were surplus in the community, and we're matching them, and 13 items a minute keeps us very busy.
Yeah, no kidding, it's crazy. So we're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more. Nice segue here with my next guest, former colleague, great friend, Mr. Andrew Hill. How are you?
Good, thank you.
And obviously got the memo. We appear to be a bookend to this today, so that was good for us to align so clearly. Andrew, is your current title is Regional Vice President of NGO and Education at Salesforce.org. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? What does that actually mean?
It is a little bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Yes. So essentially, I look after the education and non-profit sales teams within Salesforce.org. So Salesforce.org is the social impact center of Salesforce. So it's had a couple of different names over the years. Salesforce Foundation, it's now the Salesforce.org business unit. But essentially, it's working with more than 2,000 non-profit and educational institutions across Australia. We primarily help them from a technology perspective. That's what I think of as my day job. What I'm particularly passionate about is where we can really branch outside of that and look at leveraging the resources from the broader Salesforce organisation to drive greater impact within those organisations.
Nice one, fantastic. Well, welcome along, mate. It's great to see you, and thanks for joining the conversation. So, look, my final guest is has no need of introduction if you're an Australian, but we are aware that there are people who are going to be watching this further afield and all over the world. So, let me just say that Zali Steggall was a household name in Australia long before she became the fresh breath of fresh air is what I'm trying to say, Zali. I'm trying to get that out there in Australian politics. Zali, if you actually Wikipedia Zali, you'll find that they say that Zali is Australia's first individual medalist, first female medalist, and only medalist in alpine skiing in the Winter Olympics. So she's Australia's most successful ever alpine skier. And I want to stipulate not just female skier, most successful alpine skier ever. And you'll notice over her left shoulder when you see it, there's also a torch there from the Sydney Olympics. She's also a Member of Parliament for the division of Warringah since 2019. She's an absolute warrior for the environment, an absolute agent for positive change. Hello and welcome, Zali Steggall.
Thank you very much. What an introduction.
Well, it's so nice that you can take time out to be with us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks to both of you as well for joining us. It's absolutely fantastic. So let's get stuck in, shall we? It is my belief that on the whole, people want to do good. In fact, I would say people will go out of their way to do good in most cases. So when you look at that, and given that businesses are, for the most part, made up of people, it should stand to reason that businesses should also direct some of their attention to doing good. Yet, given that businesses are also focused primarily on making a profit, in most cases, that's not always the case that doing good comes first. So I might start with you, Alison, and just ask the question, is it a business responsibility or a nice to have? Who owns the challenge here, do you think?
I think it can be both. I think businesses want to do the right thing, but I think we also have to set up the infrastructure for them to do the right thing. So we have to give them the solutions. So we have to collaborate to say, can we provide the infrastructure and the solutions to all do the right thing? So, if you look, for example, in food waste, it took the idea that you could donate food rather than dump that food at the end of the day, and we set up the infrastructure to do that. So the same with what we're doing with the non-food goods is allowing businesses to know there is the solution to do that, and then when we've gone to businesses and said, hey, there is a solution to do that, they go, right, we want to be responsible, but people hadn't provided that solution. And businesses are very busy and they're working on tomorrow's product and doing that. When we've provided that infrastructure, they've said yes. And so we've had examples of busy businesses, so and big businesses like Big W, who have had solutions for food waste in their other businesses like Woolworths, but nobody had knocked on the door and said, well, what are you doing with your non-food goods, your clothing, etc. And when we knocked on the door and said, hey, do you want a solution for that? They were relieved. They wanted to do good. And so we set up those solutions for them to do that. And we've got a program with them that allows them to do good. And when we went to them, they said it's the right thing to do. They were not in a good position as a business. They were not a profit-making business, Big W at the time, to make the decision to do the right thing and do that. But they said it's the right thing to do, and they made the decision to donate those goods to their local communities with us. Now, that's a program that has now donated 6 million items through that program because it was the right thing to do. as you said, that business is made of people. All those people in that organisation feel so fantastic about what they've done with their local communities. And when we've surveyed those teams, they are so relieved and so engaged with their local communities. And, you know, that is working with, I think, over 700 local charities across Australia where they're doing good. And their staff feel so great about that at store team level, because it's the right thing to do. And that's what they get so much enjoyment out of. But it took a big decision on behalf of that organisation to say, we're going to donate those goods. And that, I think, you know, encourages their behaviour from their customers and their employees, that helps turn around a business to do well. So I think, you know, it's a joint responsibility of, you know, organisations to set up to help people to do good, and then them to make the decision to do the right thing.
Yeah, I really understand that. I often feel like there's this huge sort of dam of pent-up giving out there, just waiting for somebody to get the right tap into it so that they can turn that on, and then it flows. You know what I mean? So,
and like when we go knocking on the door, it's like they're, oh, thank you. Yes, please, we want to do good, but no one's knocked on our door. They just need the infrastructure to do that.
Zali, I said before that I had done a little bit of research. The Northern Beaches, which is kind of that huge electorate over the bridge there, it's like there's something like 33,000, more than 33,000 businesses of all sizes. Is it just leading the horse to water? You know, what is it? Do you believe it's their responsibility? How does that fit in your world?
Well, I think it really depends on the size of the businesses that you're really talking about. We have about 20,000 small businesses in Warringah, so I think they have a very different challenge and opportunity, but absolutely I think they also have a part to play. And the question is doing good, I guess, for what? Is it social change? Is it charity, assisting the less fortunate? And obviously within our society there's a huge amount that's contributed to our more vulnerable from non-for-profits and from the business and corporate sector. But then there's also the bigger questions like, you know, driving change in consumer practices, increasing sustainability, reducing plastics, and obviously reducing emissions with climate, where businesses play such an important part. And it's really what's I think's been really interesting is how the private sector businesses, small, medium and large, are really taking on that responsibility of how they operate themselves, what their customers want of them. You know, customers are more and more savvy as to who they are, you know, choosing to patronise, but also the supply chain. You know, what's behind you as a business, and I think, you know, doing good can be across so many different sectors. And I think the strength of a community is, in fact, businesses within the community really giving back to that community.
Nice. And Andrew, business responsibility or nice to have? What do you think?
So I think it's evolving over time. It's something that I think is actually employee-driven by a lot of organisations. One of the interesting times that I think we hear this at Salesforce is actually in the recruiting process. So we have a lot of employees who may choose to come to an organisation like Salesforce because of, I guess, the stories that they hear externally about what we might be doing to try and give back to the community. But we also see this with an attraction to come and work within the Salesforce.org space specifically, so that they can really find this intersection of working for a technology company, leveraging the background they have, but then giving back every day of the week, working with some amazing organisations in the community. So I think it is evolving. I don't think every organisation can give back in every way, but finding what's really inspiring the employees, the communities that the employees work or live within, and small ways that they might be able to start giving back. Starting with a small organisation can, you know, take something that's initially very small and grow to something a lot larger and more significant over time.
Got it. So you just mentioned community, Zali, you did as well. So I'm gonna throw it back to you. How should businesses approach doing good while respecting the needs of their constituents? And I guess when you're a business and some businesses have got shareholders, some people have just got customers and staff. How do you think? Where's the place to strike that balance?
Well, what I think is interesting is more and more you're seeing the data support. So businesses doing good, that have good ESG policies, that have good governance and good engagement with their employees, actually are more profitable and do better. So I don't think the two are binary, or that that there is really one excluding the other. In fact, I think it all combines to a much more profitable and positive outcome. It's because companies and business culture is led from the top. You're only as strong as the team you're part of, and obviously everyone working within a company is from a community, and that community needs to feel supported and engaged with the process, engaged with what you're trying to achieve. Where it's really interesting is when I talk to the younger generation. So our young adults, as they're coming through, they have very high expectations in relation to what their work-life balance is going to look like, but also what their work is going to stand for. They want they want a sense of good. They want a sense of satisfaction for the work they're going to do. So I think this generation has a different approach.
They're actually demanding it, aren't they? They're saying, unless I get that, I'm not interested in really talking to you as an organisation. Unless you're going to be able to provide that to me, I'll go and look elsewhere, because I'll be able to get those needs met with that alignment of purpose and profit. I think that comment about the ESG is really true. You deal with so many businesses who are wanting to do good. How do you think they're balancing that?
Yeah, I think we just hear this common language about it's the right thing to do, and I think that's driven again from these employers, because they are the community. That's where they work and live. So we have this saying that, you know, when we hear this language about a business approaching us and they're saying it's the right thing to do, and it's about their employees wanting to give back where they work and live, it becomes circular, because, you know, they want to do well by doing good. And so then, as Zali was saying, as Andrew's saying, you know, they're recruiting to come to work in an organisation where there's history that they're doing well in their community, and then their businesses start to thrive. Like, they are doing good, these businesses, because their culture and their practices reflect that, and people want to work in those organisations, and then their customers support those types of organisations, and it just becomes circular. And then they're attracted to Good 360, we're attracted to those types of customers, and then we all grow and support the community together. And I think more and more businesses are seeing that's the way forward, because they're attracting those types of employees and their businesses thrive. And so it might be about product donation or not, but more and more businesses are going, you know, how do we become, that's just the common way to work.
Yeah, it's just the status
Just
quo
the standard.
Yeah,
This is who we are, because the younger generation are going, well, I don't work for a business that doesn't have that culture and those work practices, and that's just the norm. There's less of those businesses that go, well, our shareholders don't care whether we do good or not. That's not the place anymore, because, you know, our sustainability reports demand that. Our shareholders will be demanding that. I think there's a flip and there's a movement. Like, I think it's a movement. That's the way we look at it. Like, Good 360 is trying to create this movement, and I think, you know, as referred to with Black Lives Matters, etc., there's a movement of people wanting to do good, and it comes from people being employed in these types of workplaces and creating profitable businesses like this now. And there's many examples of businesses that are profitable by doing good.
Yeah. And I should say, my understanding is turnover is much, you don't have the high turnover of staff. So yes, there's a high cost of training, and you want to keep that intellectual property, you want to keep that know-how as you develop and train people. And the last thing you want is a high loss or high turnover of staff. And so that the culture of a company plays a huge part in that retention. And we're seeing socially, there are big questions on our plate. I think it's fair to say there are big challenges ahead, and there's a high level, I would say, of anxiety. There's a lot of people with high level of concern of where we're at as a society, some of the big events we've had in the last couple of years, how, you know, COVID has definitely challenged a lot of people within our community, and really challenged our way of life, such a big health threat, and really force people to stop and think about the kind of society or community we are. And obviously around climate, there's a lot of anxiety about it's such a big problem, and there is so much frustration with the government. So people are turning to the private sector to really take the lead, and it's incredible how well they have taken the lead. But there is that sense that it's necessary. Doing good and doing the right thing is important.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on your comment about the pandemic and throw this one just to Andrew here. So in the wake of the pandemic, in the work that you're doing, do you see more or less businesses deciding to make doing good part of their core and part of their planning?
Look, I think it's been very thought-provoking for a lot of organisations. Just to Alison's comment earlier about the need for the infrastructure, I think that's been a challenge for a lot of organisations, particularly just from a volunteering perspective. If we look back 6 or 9 months, organisations that had been giving back through volunteering, for example, suddenly found it very difficult to provide that same time back to the community when you couldn't physically go out and partake in a volunteer activity. So I think there's absolutely demand there that we can tap into. Look, I think there's a general shift towards organisations doing more good in the community, whether that's aligned to the pandemic necessarily or whether that has provided a catalyst towards this. I think it's a combination of things, really. It's having a stronger voice at the top. Zali called out the need for leadership to start driving some of this change within organisations. But when you've got this groundswell of employees also wanting to do good and choosing their employers based on their ability to give back as part of their day job, and then you combine that with the catalyst that COVID has provided, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Right. And Alison, do you feel that COVID's driven more people to want to do good and help more, or have you felt like there's been a bit of a recession of that giving? What's the sense?
So I think there's a lot more thought-provoking. So I think everybody's thinking about, it's been this wake-up call of, am I in the right career? Can I do something that's much more powerful with my skills, etc.? So I think everybody's gone, wow, I didn't see this coming. It's made me reflect on whether I can be, more powerful with my skills or my business. So definitely, I think, in terms of the amount of fundraising or cash available in society, obviously that's retracted because times are very tough, so that it's harder for charities to fundraise, which is of course normal. But I think it's actually very, very interesting that businesses and people have now gone, what is the best use of my abilities? And I think, am I using my skills for good? And I think that's really exciting because now they can be very powerful with their abilities to do good. And I think, and that is using their influence and their network to do good for society and use that movement, which I think is really, really powerful. And many businesses will be influenced by the drive of their employees to use their influence within their business and go, are we going to use our influence to make sure our environments and our planets are best used? So I think that's, been such a wake-up call for us because this last year is so different to what it was this time, last year, and we're all thinking differently about what's important in life. And I think that's the most powerful thing there's never been that big a shift in life for all of us to reset and go, what's really important.
There's that challenge that sits in there as well, which is that there's the intention and there's the enthusiasm to get in and help. And then there's the difficulty of trying to drink from an empty cup. Like some organisations, some businesses just can't do it at the moment. They want to help, and they're finding really unique and interesting ways to get out there and do that. I wonder, Zali, you probably have to cop this question, but where does government stand in this? In all of this, should they lead or should they support?
Well, both.
Okay.
And again, the difficulty is I think government, I think it hasn't really been doing a good enough job of late on this. Obviously COVID has been an incredible challenge and the government has stepped up with a certain amount of support and times have been tough for a lot of businesses. But in a lot of areas, I would say the private sector is leading the way. Government is really not setting up the right incentives and opportunities to really enable change and transition to happen as quickly as possible. So it is an interesting one. We rely as a society, a huge amount on non-for-profits and community organisations for what they do within our community. So volunteers and charities provide a huge amount of the social service and support in our community that government fails to do, whether that be from homelessness, from food, for assisting refugees, assisting minority groups and the more vulnerable in our society. So I think that's an interesting one. We've got a huge, we're sort of coasting with the government coasts on the benefit of what gets done. When it comes to the environment, I find it's quite interesting. The government is clearly failing to lead when it comes to our emissions reductions and some of those big challenges we've got. And we're seeing the private sector, especially the ASX 200 and large companies, really step up. I've found it, incredibly satisfying to see so many companies step forward and really take on the challenge. But what's interesting is the government's kind of, at times resents business leaders trying to really show them up, and business leaders calling on them to be more ambitious. It's in the, we've got the government's introducing a scheme by which it wants to name and shame large corporates that make commitments for emission reductions and how they're achieving it. And it's a little ironic when you have a government minister sort of talking about that there needs to be accountability and transparency in how large corporates deliver on their ambitions, which is the very thing the government doesn't deliver. So I think more can be done, but again, leadership, it's from the top, and there has to be a sense of accountability for that to happen.
Okay. So with that in mind, a reverse segue to what I was going to ask, which is to say, how should businesses get moving? How do they get moving? What are some of the learnings you can share with us, Andrew, about how people can get that rolling within their organisation?
I'd say look for the low-hanging fruit, and I think a lot of that starts with your employees. You've got employees who live within communities. If they have things that they're passionate about, as an organisation, that's a great place to start. There are ways in which organisations can absolutely use their voice for things that may align to the organisation, however they may be bigger rocks to move. So starting with the employees and what's important to them is really critical. I think for smaller organisations there are some great frameworks. So Pledge 1%. As an idea, the idea of putting 1% of a number of things. For Salesforce, it was time, equity, and product. For other organisations, it might be profit or some other element that they want to give back. But it's a really easy way for particularly small organisations to make a pledge or a commitment that's very small at time, but then over time can grow to be quite significant. So that's something that I'd really encourage small organisations to look at. But for larger organisations, start with the employees and what's important to them.
Alison, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for us, what we do is create a movement. So we've got a thought process around First Life. So we're saying to everybody, have a think about that if it's been produced. So if you've produced it or sold or making it, be responsible for using it. So give it a life. So we're asking people to go, no matter what that product is in the world, if you've used the environment's resources to make it, make sure it gets used. And that's all we're just asking people. So we're just trying to create that movement, that thought process, be thought leaders in that space to go, there's a lot of products that get produced out there, but some of them never get a life. And in the circular economy, we're going, let's make these products. And then we say to people, let's recycle them. But we've got nobody's eye on the fact that has it been used. And we're asking everybody to think about businesses and ask those businesses to use them, because we've all got one planet and we want everybody to think about these natural resources are being used to produce stuff, but we're not asking businesses to be responsible to use it for a first life. And just consider that there should be no landfill. We should not be allowing anybody not to use these resources that have been made. And so we just want the use of first life to be a movement. And I think that's just really responsible use of product. And that's what we're just asking people to be thinking about. If you've got a business out there that made it, make them use it. Or don't make it. Only make what they need.
Yep, that just-in-time production thing.
Yeah, and I think that just makes businesses accountable for using what they can sell. And if they don't sell it, donate it or upcycle it, but do not destroy it.
And we are right in your wheelhouse, aren't we, Zali, when we're talking about things like that? I mean, this is just about, you know, you stand for so much in this space. What would your advice be to businesses who are wanting to do good and how to get going? Any?
Yeah, look, we have a huge problem with waste, and whether that be textile waste, plastics. I mean, you know, we really have a massive problem. The government is starting with, we've just introduced some legislation, but we really do need more. Product stewardship is a really important question, which I think the business sector's got to engage with, because we need a circular life of products, and there needs to be a sort of, it does need to come home to the companies so that there's a responsibility for what is put out there. We've had sort of the last 30 years of kind of mindless growth of consumerism, and it's just not sustainable. We can't keep going that way. So really that looking at quality versus quantity, and educating companies, for companies to look as well at their supply chain. I mean, there was some incredible work and legislation passed by Dr. David Cook, who was the CEO of Konica Minolta, actually, about last year, around, you know, modern slavery, for companies to really look at their supply chain and where products are coming from, where they're made, the circumstances in which they're made. These are really important questions for the large companies to really engage with, and really take responsibility. On a more community, local level, we've started something called Warringah's Roadmap to Zero, which is trying to encourage from students to individuals to businesses to engage with the challenge of reducing their footprint, whether it's around their energy choices, supply chain, waste, water, transport, and finances. So there's a lot of ways in which you can engage. You have to do it. And look, I'm a big believer that you set a plan and then you work your way. You know, baby steps, you can get there. You can be ambitious and deliver big results.
Yeah, and I love those local community schemes. That's exactly what we need to be seeing. It has to happen at a top level as well as doing good at a grassroots level. Now we kicked off with Alison, so we're gonna close out with you. And I know this is we've set this one up, but I asked Alison what were some of your most favourite stories of businesses thinking laterally about how they can help the community.
Yeah, so I think it really is about, you know, how they give back. We have a saying, right goods, right people, right time, and often in disasters we have this outpouring of good, and I think sometimes we don't do it with good intentions. We do it about, you know, how it makes us feel good, and we've seen in the disasters, you know, there was this influx of too much stuff going to communities, and I think it's the purposeful giving. So it's just sitting back for a moment and thinking, you know, what is it that somebody actually needs before we do what we want to do to help them. So we've taken a lot of businesses on the journey of, you know, your good intentions don't necessarily help the people on the other end of the right. Giving. Mm-hmm. And so lots of our businesses now are doing purposeful giving. And I think, you know, if we can all just think about, you know, how do we sometimes want to feel good when we do our giving, but does that help the recipient? And I think that's one of the things, if you're building out a giving program, think about how does that help the recipient. So, you know, right goods, right people, right time, but whatever your program is that you're building out, that's what we've sort of think about, you know, your good intentions don't necessarily always match up to the person and how they feel about when they receive that. And that's been the most powerful thing we've learned in the last 12 months.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. As we start to wrap up, a bit of a call out. So if people have heard your story and they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to connect?
If they can come to our website, we gratefully would accept donations. We've grown quite a lot. You know, we did 6 million items to people in need last year. We expect to do about 10 million items this year. The need with COVID just continues to grow. It's not a 2020 issue. It continues to happen in 2021 as well. 13
items a minute it's pretty incredible. So the website is good360.org.au. Make sure you get the AU, otherwise you're visiting the site in the US. That's actually about all the time we've got today, and that's been absolutely fantastic. I feel like I could talk to all three of you all day, but I know you're very busy people. So first of all, Alison, thank you. Really appreciate it. Andrew, thank you so much. And Zali on the Zoom link, thank you so much for giving us your time and spending it with us today. It's been fantastic.
Thanks.
Don't forget, check out the platform for some awesome content, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session here at Compass. Thanks very much.